All right, welcome back in here to Live Now from Fox. I am Andy Mack. Of course, getting the keys to your new home, that might be the dream still of many Americans, but a 50-year mortgage on that house, it might not be, as the President Donald Trump announcing a new proposal that might leverage a 50-year mortgage in it, as it might have significant drawbacks. The president floated the idea about a week ago that home buyers should have half a century, 50-year mortgages to make purchasing homes more affordable. On paper, longer mortgages do what they promise, lower the monthly bill, but those smaller payments could come at a cost, higher rates, more interest paid, and slower wealth building over time. Let's bring into a conversation a guy that knows a lot about this, Jason Mitchell of the Jason Mitchell Group, with over $5 billion in sales last year alone. Obviously, you know a thing or two about this. What do you make of the 50-year loan? Could it be beneficial to home buyers?
Well, first, thanks for having me. There's obviously anything that comes out of this administration these days, you're always going to have your pundits that point to the negatives right away. That's the world in which we live in. Let's start with what the proposal is. The proposal is we want to help more people achieve home ownership through a 50-year amortization, through a 50-year mortgage. Now, immediately, you hear things like, oh, great, it'll take 50 years to pay off your home, or just more interest for the bad banks out there. And the reality is that although all those are true, meaning you will pay more interest and it will take much longer to pay off your home, the reality is the key to home ownership, as you had just mentioned, is the key. And when you talk about right now, higher prices, higher interest rates, it's very difficult for the average American to purchase a home. In fact, the average age now of the first-time homebuyer is 40 years old. And that's due to high prices and higher interest rates. But Andy, here's the ticket. I did some math before we went on today. And here's the difference, because what people don't think about and what they don't understand is most people refinance their home 3 times and only own their home for 12 years, which means you're resetting your note a lot. So many times you don't even really dig away at that principal because you haven't been in the loan long enough. Now, over a 5-year period, if we were to take a 50-year mortgage versus a 30-year mortgage, your balance after 5 years is $372,000 on a 30-year and $392,000 on a 50. That's $20,000 in principal difference. I get that. But here's the ticket. If you were to get into a mortgage and if the 50-year loan did help you secure a home, if we took an average appreciation of 6% per year, which I think is about fair, in 5 years, your home is worth $535,000. So although you didn't eat into the principal, you now have $135,000 of equity that you wouldn't have had if the program was not available. And that's the key to this proposal that Mr. Pulte has put forward.
Yeah, there's a lot of different facts and figures in there that are maybe overlooked in terms of this. You mentioned, obviously, just getting qualified for this. When you talk to people about buying a home, whether it's their first home or otherwise, what's the conversations around a 15-year loan, a 30-year loan, and now potentially, what are the type of conversations around all of these types of loans? How do you advise people?
Well, it's based on situation. And, President Trump had mentioned something the other day where he said, look, this isn't a big deal. And what he meant by that is this is a potential other option. And that's why, to me, having an administration that's at least trying to be creative and come up with ways for homeowners or future homeowners to have home ownership, this becomes an option. There's a lot of products out there. There's a 30-year mortgage, a 15-year mortgage. There's adjustable rate mortgages, 3-year, 5-year, 7-year, 10-year. There's USDA, there's VA, there's FHA. So there's a lot of different mortgages out there. This mortgage in particular on a 50-year note, Andy, by the way, it saves you $293 a month. So if you can save $300 a month by having a 50-year mortgage at your disposal and you can access home ownership, well, then it could be a viable option for many Americans out there.
Yeah, and they could get a new home. People that wouldn't be able to get keys to a home would be able to do that. We talk about the interest rates being really a kind of thing that's holding a lot of people back as well. If a 50-year mortgage was out there, what type of interest rate might be coming with that? And are you concerned about that rate with the interest that would compound?
Yeah, the interest over the course of the loan certainly is going to be much higher. The interest rate that the banks would set, I would imagine it would be slightly higher than your traditional 30-year fixed. Now, why is that? Just as you're getting into a 50-year mortgage, the bank is also committing to you that for 50 years, they're going to give you this set interest rate, 2 generations. And so I would imagine the rate would be slightly higher, if not a full point higher on a 50-year. I'm not sure. But again, if it helps you achieve home ownership, real estate over the course of time always goes up. Even after the Great Recession, and you and I are both here in Arizona, we saw it very dramatically here in Arizona. Even after the Great Recession, after 7 years, we were back to our old prices. So real estate always will trend up over the course of time, even in its worst of times. We have to get more Americans into housing. It is the key. It is too expensive right now, check to check. Home ownership unlocks the ability to earn equity, which then allows you after 10, 15 years to send your kids to school, to retire because you were able to have home ownership sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and obviously opening that to more Americans, having just the opportunity to get into a house could go a long way. Do you think a 50-year mortgage, do you think that would actually be able to move the needle? Because there are so many people, you mentioned the age number, people aren't buying their first home until roughly 40 years old. Do you think a 50-year mortgage could move the needle, allow enough people to get into homes to change this kind of narrative?
I do, but you have to be cautious because what we can't have right now is we can't have this extreme accelerated buyers into the market center because prices are already too high. We have to be very careful with the measurement of not trying to explode the housing market because of values. Now, how we get out of that is we have to build more supply. And I can tell you that Mr. Pulte, I used to work for Pulte Homes. I started my career there. I met his grandfather several times. I'm from Detroit. I can tell you that that family legacy, if anybody knows anything about residential housing, I can tell you it's that family. But the supply is what we need. The interest rate side of what that can affect in terms of qualification, yes, it can be super impactful because it's not about the down payment. We have low down payment programs out there. The kicker is your DTI or debt to income ratio. If you can lower that by, in this case, $300 when you go to qualify, many Americans will actually be able to be approved to purchase a home because it's $300 less on what they call the debt to income ratio. So yes, I do believe it could be very impactful.
And you mentioned just the supply. That is also an issue. But this 50-year mortgage could boost demand. Do those levers just of the economics kind of, are they out there at all? Are they in balance? Is that a concern to you?
Well, supply is certainly a concern. And the problem with supply, it's not a money thing. It's not about do we have the ability to build? The problem is it takes too long to build. The bureaucracy to build a home and the red tape that comes with it, take Pulte as an example. When they go into a community and they buy a piece of dirt, it takes years and years to get entitlements, to get zoning and all these things. We must look to removing so much red tape when it comes to building because we need more supply, and the type of supply we need is first-time homebuyer supply.
And real estate is just so local in terms of what you guys do at the Jason Mitchell Group. You're in all of these different markets around the country. Does a 50-year mortgage rate work in one place and then not another? Do they have to be a little bit more specialized? Is that something?
Well, that goes back to conventional loan limits. And so each county has their determined conventional loan limits. Like places like California up in San Francisco, they would have higher conforming loan limits versus places like necessarily Detroit or other places. And so conforming loan limits are set to where if you have to go into jumbo products, as an example, you would have a different product of mortgage that you're applying for. So yes, I do believe that geographically it does make a difference. I still think, though, as long as the 50-year mortgage is available in some parts of the country, that it helps homeowners across the board. As you raise the note or the loan amount that you're borrowing against a 50-year amortization versus a 30, that spread will actually be more impactful. Now, the question is, what do they do about the interest rate? Does the interest rate go from potentially a 6 to a 7 or a 7.5? I think that's TBD. But it certainly gives the ability for homeowners to have a lower debt to income ratio to qualify for that mortgage.
Yeah, it is definitely an interesting idea. Jason Mitchell, anything else you'd like to add about this? It's fascinating to kind of look in the numbers and how home ownership really unlocks a lot of things. Anything else you want to note about this before I let you go?
Well, I think that the proposal, like I said, what I like is there's conversation. There's conversation about helping Americans achieve home ownership, and that's good for everybody. It doesn't always have to be so political. And I think that President Trump, whenever anything comes out from the administration, you automatically have Americans that disagree or want to, torch that. I said the other day that if President Trump said it was good to breathe air, many people would die of suffocation. And it's one of those things to where we have to just understand this is a housing problem. This doesn't need to be political, but we have a real housing problem in the United States right now caused by lack of supply and excessive values along with high interest rates. And we have to be very careful with how we manage this moving forward. And I believe these ideas and concepts certainly get people talking, and it potentially opens the door to more first-time homebuyers, especially achieving home ownership, which is a good thing for everybody.
That is so very true. And there's a lot of different parts and angles to this are so very interesting. All right, Jason, thank you so much. I appreciate you making time here on this Sunday. Thanks again.
Thanks, Andy.